Alright, imagine having an absolute boss of a CEO girlfriend with a completely wild duel. Personality, outside, she is an absolute iceberg beauty, practically worshipped by a billion people worldwide, but the second she sees Scott, she instantly turns into an obedient, super clingy wife. She practically glues her entire self to him, demanding kisses and cuddles. She even makes him sit down just so he can lift her up high like a trophy, and every single time this happens, Scott's heart is overwhelmed with massive guilt. Why? Because in his past life, Scott was an absolute idiot who stubbornly insisted on choosing Khloe. This directly led the fiercely possessive Serena to force his hand by tragically jumping right into the high seas. Eventually, Scott got his foolish wish and ended up with Khloe, but who would have thought Khloe was not only secretly sugar mommying her old childhood crush, but also teamed up with that guy to completely ruin Scott's family. It was only then he realized exactly how precious Serena's love truly was. So in this second life, he is determined to treat Serena like an absolute queen and make sure Khloe finally pays the ultimate price. Right now, Serena had just finished helping him change his clothes. He looked at himself in the mirror, and just one single glance made him gasp in pure horror. The young guy staring back had a totally messy bird nest for hair, a haggard face, and a super scruffy beard. It was the literal definition of a greasy, middle-aged loser vibe, and all this was just because he was recently rejected. After confessing to Khloe, ever since that moment, Scott had been completely down in the dumps. He dug out some grooming tools from the drawer and gave himself a really careful trim. Before long, a sharp, handsome young man reappeared right in the mirror. Meanwhile, Serena was downstairs having breakfast with her corporate bestie. Lexi spoke up, not to be rude, but what exactly is so great about Scott? He is ugly as sin, and he is also constantly flirting with that other girl in his class. Do you have some kind of weird fetish for ugly guys? Before Lexi could even finish her sentence, she received a legendary, terrifying death glare directly from Serena. What are you guys talking about? You seem so happy, Scott said, casually, slowly making his way right down the stairs. Lexi paused slightly, and when she followed the voice and looked over, she was completely stunned. Honestly, even if you beat her to death, she never would have believed that Serena was actually hiding such a top-tier, incredibly handsome puppy dog boyfriend in her house. Serena also froze the moment Scott appeared. He naturally sat down opposite the two of them and helped himself to a bowl of porridge. This is delicious. Did you cook it? He asked, pretending to be completely clueless. A look of absolute, pure astonishment flashed across Serena's face. She fully expected him to ignore her like he usually did, with his brain completely hyperfixated on Khloe. But before Serena could even answer, Lexi cut in. Hey, handsome, you might be extremely good-looking, but your brain seems a little slow. Our CEO is incredibly busy. Where would she find the time to cook porridge? The chef obviously made this. Scott completely ignored her and instead looked at Serena with a bright smile. Is what she said true? Because tasting this porridge, it definitely has the exact flavor of my baby's cooking. And watch this, the moment that word dropped, Lexi practically exploded on the spot, yet Serena did not show the look of disgust that Lexi was so eagerly anticipating. Instead, she simply nodded. I made it. Since when did you learn how to cook? Lexi shrieked in total disbelief. Since the day I met him, of course, Serena replied smoothly. Hearing this, Lexi looked absolutely furious, her face twisting into an expression of pure outrage. These two had been best friends for years, yet she had never tasted a single bite of food cooked by Serena. Listen right here. Handsome, tell me, what exact dark magic did you use to push that ugly Scott out of the picture? Ma'am, I am Scott, our guy replied, staring her down with an intensely cold smile. And right then, the bowl in Lexi's hand slipped, shattering loudly across the floor. She stared at Scott in absolute shock, pointing right at him, totally unable to even form a proper sentence. For nearly 30 seconds, you are that ugly weirdo, how is this even? Biologically possible, Scott totally ignored her dramatic panic, simply picking up some food with his chopsticks and casually dropping it into Serena's bowl. Baby, drop me off. At school later, I am going to be late. Serena looked pleasantly surprised. In the past, she always offered to drive him to campus, but he had ruthlessly rejected her every single time. She had no clue what had gotten into him today. After hopping into the car, Scott quietly enjoyed the scenery along the way, just casually thinking about his past life. But pay attention here, because right then his phone buzzed with seriously awful timing. Messages from Khloe instantly started popping up nonstop. Scott, why haven't you come to pick me up yet? I am going to be late, plus I need cash for my mom's medical bills. Go to the hospital and pay the balance today. Scott was just about to text Khloe back to make things crystal clear, but his wife snatched the phone right out of his hand. He could not stop her. She had already read the entitled messages on the bright screen. Her eyes instantly darkened like a raging storm. She immediately pulled the car over and smashed the voice call button. The call connected quickly, and Khloe's highly annoyed and embarrassed voice echoed loudly through the speaker. Scott, why are you not here yet? I have been waiting for 10 entire minutes. Do you have any idea how freezing it is today? Serena lowered her beautiful eyes, quietly listened to the entire bratty rant, and then suddenly grabbed Scott by the collar, kissing him incredibly deeply. Instantly, wild sounds that left far too much to the imagination echoed right through the car. Serena, worried that Khloe might miss it, purposely brought the phone's microphone much closer, and with his deliberate cooperation, Serena's usually pale cheeks slowly began to flush a deep red, and the sounds grew even more intensely romantic. Meanwhile, on the other end, Khloe finally realized something was terribly wrong. You love to see it. Scott, she called out in panic, but nobody answered her. Instead, what followed were waves of heavy romantic sighs. At that exact moment, Khloe felt like a bucket of ice. Water had been dumped straight over her head. Scott, how could you do this, even though she never actually liked him, only agreeing to ride to school with him because taking his fancy car was super convenient, soaking up all those envious stares from passing students. Realizing that he was currently getting super intimate with another woman still felt exactly like her heart got completely smashed by a hammer. Serena kissed him until her legs practically turned to total jelly before finally pulling away. She reluctantly begged for mercy out of absolute sheer exhaustion. Catching her breath, she leaned really close to the mic and she delivered a line that hit Khloe like literal lightning. Scott is mine, just stay the heck away from him. Before Khloe could even process that, the call was abruptly dead. Khloe stomped her feet in absolute fury. Scott, you massive jerk, I will never forgive you for this. Never. In Khloe's head, this girl was 100% a paid actress Scott had hired. She figured our guy was using this cheap trick to make her jealous, a petty revenge for rejecting his confession days ago. What an absolutely childish, pathetic trick. Meanwhile, back in the car, Serena furrowed her beautiful brows and interrogated our guy. Exactly how many women have you been with? Why are you such a pro at this? In this lifetime, you are the only one. Scott replied completely smoothly. That sentence instantly put out all of Serena's blazing jealousy. Even Scott didn't expect her to be so easily won over. Serena dropped him off at the school gates and sped off, just as Scott was about to walk inside. A sharp, seriously angry female voice stopped him dead. Scott, he turned around. It was Khloe, having clearly just hopped out of a taxi. Scott, what is wrong with you? Why didn't you pick me up? Scott stared at her, paused for a beat, then sneered with total, absolute disgust. Why on earth should I pick you up? What exactly are we? Khloe just stared at his newly icy attitude in total shock. What the heck was wrong with Scott today, and who was that girl on the phone? Before she could even snap back to reality, Scott turned around and marched straight into the school without A single glance back, leaving Khlo completely alone at the gates, shivering. The cold wind, but you and I know a secret. Serena was glaring at Khlo from the shadows. Once class finally started, Khlo kept glaring at the back of Scott's head. She just couldn't believe it. The guy who used to treat her like absolute royalty was acting so ice cold today. Just then, the English teacher, Miss Quinn, walked into the room and trailing right behind her, a seriously handsome new male student. Every girl in the class immediately snapped their heads up. Heck, even Khlo looked deeply captivated, but the moment Scott laid eyes on him, he knew exactly who this guy was, the pretty boy who teamed up with Khlo to completely ruin Scott's life in the previous timeline. Hello everyone, meet our brand new transfer student Simon, Miss Quinn announced cheerfully. Simon, you can sit right next to Khlo. The whole room froze for a beat, then every single eye darted straight over to Scott, since he had just been publicly rejected by Khlo recently. You and I know they all wanted to see his reaction. Unfortunately for them, they were about to be deeply disappointed. Scott didn't have any dramatic outburst at all. Following the teacher's gesture, Simon looked right over at Khlo. Walking closer, he absolutely couldn't help but freeze up. He really hadn't expected to see such a gorgeous girl. Simon's interest was instantly piqued. He greeted Khlo with a face just totally full of overwhelming confidence. Hi, I am Simon, your new desk mate from now on. Simon, who basically thought he was God's gift to women, was already fantasizing hard. He figured the moment she saw his handsome face, she would definitely blush, but who knew that Khlo wouldn't even bother lifting her head. Simon awkwardly scratched his head and sat down right beside her in silence. What followed was Miss Quinn's incredibly hypnotic lecture throughout the whole class. Khlo was completely and utterly distracted, constantly spacing out while staring daggers at Scott. Her mind was still entirely stuck on that morning's mysterious phone call. Who was that girl? Had Scott really moved on? Sitting right next to her, Scott missed Khlo's internal soap opera entirely. Instead, he was actually flipping through his textbooks, locking in for the upcoming college entrance exams. Before his regression, Scott's grades were always in the top 3 of the whole school, but then Khlo casually mentioned she only liked bad boys with terrible grades, so Scott purposely stopped studying completely. That ultimately made him bomb the entrance exams, landing him in some second-rate college. Now with a second chance at life, why would he ever repeat that same idiotic mistake? But right as Scott was lost in his past memories, Miss Quinn chucked a piece of chalk right at his head. Scott, you are spacing out again. You tanked our class average during the mock exams last month, and you are still slacking off. Hearing the scolding, Khlo suddenly felt relieved she rejected his confession. Seriously, if everyone around them knew she dated such a massive academic failure, just how humiliating would that be? But you and I know today was different. Facing Miss Quinn's public humiliation, Scott did not just sit there and take it like before. Instead, he confidently declared he would rank dead first in the upcoming midterms. He even made a crazy bet. If he did not place first, he would voluntarily drop out of school entirely. Khlo just sighed softly, thinking he was being completely childish. With under a week until the midterms, how could he ever get first place? And Simon, obviously, did not miss the chance to throw out some mocking comments from the sidelines. Just like that, it was already the lunch break. Simon confidently strutted up to Khlo's desk. Khlo, let me buy you lunch. She peeked at Scott from the corner of her eye, driven by petty, stupid revenge. She nodded. She wanted Scott to see that even without him, plenty of guys were lining up to simp for her. She led Simon to a spot near the school. In his past life, Scott brought her here all the time. She honestly believed this place had the best food of all the nearby spots. She just never understood why barely any students ate there. Then she walked into the diner, grabbed a window seat, and completely naturally snatched the menu from the waiter. Scott, get me a. Halfway through her demand, she incredibly awkwardly Remembered the guy sitting across from her today was not Scott. Simon also sensed. Something was super off and frowned. Khlo suddenly felt a weird emptiness in her chest. Back when Scott was around, she just waved her hand and all sorts of delicious food would practically be hand-fed to her, right as she was thinking about this. She looked up and spotted Scott sitting at a nearby table, resting his chin on his hand, staring out the window. Total joy hit her heart. She confidently assumed Scott could not let her go, so he came alone to their usual spot just to wait for her, and seeing her with Simon, he must feel too inferior to come say hi, but that was fine. After they finished eating, she would generously give Scott a way out. Now, watch what is happening inside the Serena family villa. Serena was sitting on the sofa with a completely dark, thunderous expression. Priceless antique vases had been totally smashed all over the floor. The surrounding servants were trembling in fear, not even daring to breathe too loudly. Usually during times like this, there was literally only one person in the entire. Not a single soul dared to speak. Only Scott could calm Serena's fury. But Scott wasn't here today. Serena muttered, "Scott, you belong to me." Her stunning face was completely frozen. She just found out that Khlo and Scott walked into the exact same restaurant. "Boss Serena, should we head over and drag young Master Scott back right away?" her assistant asked, totally terrified. Snap! Serena literally crushed her glass. Bloodshot veins flared wildly in her striking eyes. Her voice dripped with pure twisted obsession and deep pain. "You actually lied to me, but I am never letting you escape, even if we both die, we die together." Meanwhile, back at the restaurant, Khlo's food finally arrived. She ate, happily chatting with Simon, and honestly, Simon was incredibly good at charming girls, easily making Khlo laugh out loud. They joked around and chatted, but between laughs, Khlo kept instinctively glancing over at Scott. She kept thinking, seeing me with Simon, Scott must be feeling absolutely crushed right now, right? With that thought, she suddenly felt an intense wave of smugness and purposely laughed even louder. Once the two finished eating, the waiter strolled over, completely polite. "You two, your total bill comes to $1,200. How would you like to pay?" "What?" Simon practically leaped right out of his chair. "We ordered 2 dishes and a soup, and it is over $1,000. The waiter smiled, keeping his perfectly polite tone. "Yes, sir. Every ingredient in our restaurant is flown in fresh from overseas every single day. Plus, our head chef is a famous culinary master. This price is honestly a massive bargain." Khlo was absolutely stunned. The menu never had any prices listed. In the past, whenever she ate here, our guy Scott always paid the bill in advance. She had zero idea this place was so insanely expensive. If that was true, the cash Scott spent on her over the years must be an absolutely astronomical fortune. "Khlo, even though I promised to treat you, I literally cannot afford a $1,200 bill," Simon muttered, looking incredibly embarrassed. "Sorry, I had no clue this place was so expensive either," Khlo replied, feeling pretty guilty, but honestly, she also felt a massive wave of disgust inside. He cannot even afford $1,000. When Scott and I ate here, we ordered at least 4 whole dishes, and Scott never once complained about the price. Simon let out a huge sigh. "I do not have enough cash right now. Why do you not pay first?" With zero choices, Khlo marched to Scott's table. "Scott, could you just cover my bill first?" Scott was busy watching the traffic outside, only turning his head when she spoke. He found this entire situation hilarious. "Why?" Khlo felt her frustration spiking. "Scott, aren't you just sitting here waiting for me? Are you seriously going to watch me get humiliated in public over a bill just to make yourself feel better? Waiting for you?" Scott openly scoffed. "Why on earth should I pay? What is our relationship?" "Exactly, we are friends, right?" Khlo fired back instantly. "Have you not always taken care of me?" "Sorry, but I have absolute zero obligation to pay your bills." Scott turned his head away, and honestly, you love to see it. The waiter Standing nearby looked incredibly awkward. Miss, if you do not have enough cash, you could just call your family to come pay. KH Lo's entire face stiffened. Stick with me here. KH Lo had never been in such a humiliating situation. Scott, just front the cash for me, treat it as a loan, she hissed through gritted teeth. Scott just snorted coldly, not lending it. Why? KH Lo was practically on the verge of a breakdown. Seeing her acting so relentlessly annoying, Scott simply turned his entire body to face her. Have you ever heard the old saying, borrow and return, and it is easy to borrow again? Last year, you claimed you felt sick and suddenly needed a hospital checkup, so you borrowed $5,000 from me. At the start of this year, you said your family needed groceries and borrowed another $10,000. Barely a month later, you wanted to see a concert. I will not even count the $3,000 for the ticket, but the travel expenses and the cash you spent eating and partying for a few days came to over $10,000. Last month, you said the seasons were changing and you needed new clothes. That was another $20,000. And what about your mother and her medical bills over all these years? Can you even calculate how much you have borrowed from me? Scott laid out every single excuse KH Lo had used to drain money from him over the years, item by item. By the end, his tone had turned absolutely freezing cold. Have you ever paid back a single penny of this money? KH Lo flushed beet red as she stammered in panic. But you willingly lent me that money and you said I did not have to pay it back. Well, now I am telling you to pay it back. Pay up. Scott raised his hand in a demanding gesture. KH Lo was totally humiliated and furious. Tears rolled out of her clear eyes. Scott, you are being such a massive bully. This money is nothing to you. Because I have money, you do not have to pay back your debts. KH Lo, the sheer audacity you possess is honestly astonishing. The bank has lots of money, too. Why don't you go rob it? Scott did not want to leave her a single ounce of dignity, questioning her directly. You promised you would always support me. KH Lo felt like her heart had been completely ripped open, cold air freezing her from the inside out. You and I can feel it, just as Scott was about to tell KH Lo to get lost, the waiter brought several exquisite dishes right to his table. Mr. Scott, the dishes you pre-ordered are all here. Please enjoy your meal. KH Lo saw this and lit up. She was completely convinced that Scott had only said those harsh words because he was jealous of her eating with Simon. She smiled through her tears and boldly sat right across from him. Scott, if you wanted to treat me to a meal, you should have just said so. Why beat around the bush? Saying that, she reached right for the chopsticks on the table, but exactly at that very moment, Serena stormed right into the restaurant and delivered a massive, resounding slap straight across KH Lo and her shameless face. You dare flirt with my man, KH Lo, are you tired of living? KH Lo was slapped so intensely hard she was utterly disoriented. She instinctively looked at Scott with helpless, pleading eyes. Back in the past, whenever she showed this exact expression, Scott would defend her unconditionally. Whatever she asked for, he agreed to without a single second thought. Scott wanted to treat me to a delicious meal. Why did you hit me? She demanded, looking at Serena, entirely confident that Scott would take her side. But Scott frowned deeply, stood up and grabbed Serena by the hand. Serena froze, suddenly remembering the last time she completely lost her temper and tried to hit KH Lo. Back then, without hesitating, Scott had intercepted and slapped Serena back, but you and I know she was used to acting like a ruthless tyrant. But honestly, when it came to the person she loved, Khloe played the innocent victim perfectly, pretending to swallow all her fake grievances. Inside, she felt incredibly smug. We have all seen this fake, forgiving act before. Serena, if you just apologize to me, I will completely let this slide. But the very next second, she heard his intensely worried voice calling out, Baby, why is your hand bleeding? Khloe stood there completely dumbfounded. She never expected him to call Serena baby. He was supposed to be a total block of unromantic wood. How could he possibly use such an intimate pet name for anyone other than her? Serena was honestly just as stunned. She had marched over here to unleash pure wrath, but his one sentence instantly evaporated all. Her anger away, she had not even noticed her finger was hurt. Thinking back, she realized she cut it on those broken vase fragments back home. It is nothing. Serious, just a tiny scratch. What do you mean not serious? It is bleeding, he held her hand, blowing on it gently while looking absolutely heartbroken. If a vase breaks, just let the servants clean it up. You are my precious treasure. Seeing you hurt is literally breaking my heart. Even though his words were incredibly cheesy, his face looked as sincere as humanly possible. Serena's cold expression instantly melted into pure softness. But then, remembering the exact reason she broke the vases, her beautiful face turned freezing cold again. You lied to me. He paused, totally confused. When did I ever lie to you? I prepared all this food just for you. He whipped out his phone and opened their chat log together. Look, I sent you a message an hour ago saying I wanted to have lunch. Seeing that he had actually saved her contact name as Kiss Kiss Baby, Serena's stormy mood instantly cleared up into bright sunny skies. She had smashed her phone back home, so she never saw the message. Baby, you have absolutely no idea. I was sitting here perfectly fine, waiting for you to come eat with me, and then she suddenly runs over, demanding I pay for her meal. When I refused, she just sat her butt right down across from me. It was so incredibly weird and annoying. Saying that, he tightly wrapped his arm around Serena's waist. Baby, you just have to believe me. I am completely innocent. Khloe's face instantly turned bright tomato red. You and I can barely tell if it was from sheer embarrassment or absolute crushing humiliation. She had never seen him act so ridiculously clingy before. Plus, ever since Serena walked into the room, he had not spared Khloe a glance. Yet the last time they all ran into Serena together, she had merely thrown a sarcastic insult at Khloe, and he had been absolutely furious. He not only yelled at Serena, calling her some unwanted old hag, but he also left her standing right there, alone while he drove Khloe home. Furthermore, he had always openly and loudly despised Serena to the point where he did not even want to speak an extra word to her. Khloe could not help but start writing another crazy mental script. Could it be that he is purposely acting like this just to make me jealous? She thought about it hard and concluded this was the only logical explanation. But when she finally looked up, he was already walking away with Serena. As he walked, he kept rambling on. Baby, I am taking you to the hospital right now. We cannot let your hand get a scar. It is just a tiny scratch. We do not need to go to the hospital, Serena softly replied, her tone sounding a bit shy and super awkward. Nonsense, an injury this severe definitely requires a professional doctor. If you will not take care of yourself, I have to do it for you. By the time Khloe finally snapped back to reality, the waiter had already walked right up to her, his tone. The waiter glared, totally fed up. Miss, you still haven't paid. Khloe finally turned around, only to realize Simon pulled a total vanishing act. She gritted her teeth in pure frustration. She had always spent our guys' money, zero savings of her own. Just then, the waiter's sharp eyes locked right onto her handbag. Miss, if you can't pay the bill, you can leave that bag as collateral. Khloe froze, staring down at her handbag. Our MC gifted it to her last month. If it covered a meal, she might as well hand it over. After all, it looked super generic. Totally basic street style, right? Once she got home, she'd simply buy a brand new one, so bag handed over. Khloe stormed out and opened a shopping app on her phone, ready to buy a pretty little replacement. But wait, her jaw dropped. The homepage recommended the exact same bag she gave away. Price tag, $8,888. She was completely stunned. Clicking it, she realized it was absolutely identical to the one our boy casually gifted her. She totally thought it was just some cheap trinket, not even a real gift, but you and I know it was worth so much more. Traded for a $400 meal, she took a massive, catastrophic loss. Anyway, over at Serena's villa, Lexi hugged a bowl of medicine, looking pitifully at Serena. My dear queen, please just drink it. Serena glared at the pitch-black herbal sludge, her brows furrowed deeply, and she closed her eyes in pure annoyance. She suffered from brutal insomnia, and this herbal medicine was meant to help her sleep. It worked wonders, but it was violently, horribly bitter. Every single time Lexi tried making Serena take her medicine, it was a nightmare. Forget Serena, even Lexi herself felt slightly nauseous just smelling the bowl. "Let me do it," our hero said. Strolling over in cozy loungewear and taking the bowl, Lexi instantly flashed an expression of pure disbelief. Her and Serena had been besties for over 10 years. Absolutely nobody understood Serena's stubborn temper better than she did. If she didn't want her medicine, even the gods couldn't force her. There was no way Lexi believed his words would ever carry more weight than hers. "Baby, let me feed it to you, okay?" he asked gently. Serena opened her eyes, although her expression softened up slightly. Her eyes still screamed pure resistance when staring at that bowl. Skipping the small talk, he simply took a mouthful of the medicine himself and without a single word, pressed his lips directly against Serena's. She gasped in shock before she could even react. That bitter taste of medicine spread between them. "Oh my God, my eyes!" Lexi let out a dramatic wail, covered her eyes, and practically sprinted out of the room. He smoothly wrapped his arm around Serena's slender waist. Even though the bitter medicine had been successfully delivered, his hands definitely did not stop moving. Serena's face flushed a deep, beautiful crimson, even though the medicine was brutally bitter. Being fed like this made her heart race. It wasn't until someone suddenly knocked on the door that he finally stopped his hands from roaming all over her. The person waiting was a professional hypnotist Serena had hired. "Miss Serena, please relax and follow my guidance completely. I believe you'll drift into dreamland very soon," the hypnotist stated with supreme. "You and I can see it." Serena lowers her beautiful, chilling eyes. Every single glance she shoots at the poor hypnotist is absolutely terrifying. Pure murderous intent. The guy is literally shivering from head to toe. He is silently panicking, wondering how he offended this terrifying boss lady. Then he glances over at Scott standing nearby, and it suddenly clicks. The poor guy showed up at the absolute worst possible time today. He completely ruined their private moment. No wonder she wants him gone. Mustering every ounce of his courage, he tries starting the hypnosis session. But 30 whole minutes drag by, and Serena isn't even slightly drowsy. His fancy hypnosis is having literally zero effect on her right now. He stammers an excuse about her subconscious feeling totally unsafe here. He nervously suggests kicking out Scott just to help her fall asleep. Hearing that nonsense, Scott just walks right over and scoops Serena up. A super smooth bridal carry. The hypnotist immediately tries stopping him, panicking. He yells that her therapy isn't done, and she definitely won't sleep. But before he can even finish complaining, he gets hit with a terrifying death glare from Serena herself. He wisely shuts his mouth immediately. Serena drops that murderous aura, looks up at Scott softly, and whispers, "Let's go to bed." Scott gently lays her down onto the mattress. Resting against his chest, listening to his steady heartbeat, Serena completely relaxes. A sudden warmth washes over her, and boom, she falls fast asleep instantly. The hypnotist's jaw hits the floor. He has treated her for ages and knows exactly how impossibly stubborn her insomnia really is. Yet today, Scott coaxed her to sleep with literally zero effort. Absolute boss move. Scott shoots the guy one cold look, and the hypnotist quickly packs up. He leaves. "Now stick with me here." We jump forward one entire week. Midterms are finally here, and seating arrangements are based on previous exam rankings, which completely means Scott's room is exclusively packed with the absolute worst students. Every single kid in there is staring blindly at their test paper, like it was written in alien hieroglyphics. The completely clueless ones start desperately looking around for answers. The strict proctor loudly clears his throat. He loudly warns them that anyone caught cheating gets an automatic 0. Then his sharp gaze locks straight onto Scott, chilling in the back row. Miss Quinn specifically ordered this guy to make sure Scott couldn't possibly cheat. But unlike those other failing students, Scott isn't looking around at all. Instead, he casually flips through the entire exam paper for a brief second. Then he just grabs his pen and starts, but his speed, terrifyingly fast. He blitzes through the multiple choice section in seconds, no hesitation whatsoever. The entire first page, done in 3 minutes, the proctor is deeply confused. Is this kid just randomly guessing answers? This is advanced math, right? And those 2 sheets of scratch paper they handed out, completely, totally blank. Multiple choice is one thing, but the back page is completely filled with massively complex, long-form problem-solving questions, like serious brain melters. How could anyone solve advanced math without writing a single calculation down? Burning with absolute suspicion, the proctor marches over and checks Scott's paper. For every single question, our guy had neatly written lines of complex formulas. Too bad the proctor was the gym teacher, couldn't read a single word Scott wrote down, but you and I know the deal. He wasn't a genius, but he'd seen enough of them. Watching top-tier students during exams, he knew exactly how those brilliant kids always wrote as much as possible, filling up every single inch of the paper, so he figured since Scott clearly didn't know the answers, he was just scribbling random math formulas from memory, trying desperately to make the page look full. The teacher wanted to keep watching, but Scott suddenly put his pen down, checked the clock, and spoke up. "Teacher, I'm handing in my paper." The proctor just frowned. "Kid, you really should double-check your work before turning it in." "No need," Scott replied sharply, seeing his completely indifferent attitude. The teacher speechlessly collected the paper. Watching Scott walk away, he just muttered about him being a totally hopeless, useless case. Shaking his head, he immediately turned around and reported Scott's behavior straight to Miss Quinn. For the rest of the exams, Scott handed his papers in early every single time, especially the English exam. He didn't write a single word, slept for 30 minutes, and then just walked out. A few days later, midterm results were finally out. Miss Quinn strutted into the classroom holding a huge stack of English exams. "Class rep, hand these out." But get this, she actually held onto Scott's paper and raised it up for everyone to see. "Everyone, take a look. This right here is Scott's exam, a completely blank 0. She slammed her hand onto the desk, laughing coldly with absolute satisfaction. "Before these exams, you personally promised that if you didn't rank first place, you would voluntarily drop out. I fully expect you to keep your word." The entire class instantly turned to look at Scott, whispering furiously, "Serves him right, pretending to be some genius. If you lack the actual skills, don't try to act like a boss." Sure, the English test was tough, but Scott is completely brain-dead. Even picking B for every single question, he'd get at least 20 or 30 points. Maybe he meant getting first place. From the absolute bottom, mocking laughter echoed back and forth, completely turning the classroom into a chaotic circus. Miss Quinn slammed her hand down once again, and everyone finally shut up. She then cast a highly satisfied look at Simon. Even though the exam was incredibly difficult this time around, our very own Simon scored 135 points, the highest score school-wide, fully 10 points higher than second place. Everyone should really look to Simon as a role model for those who didn't do well. Do not be discouraged. As long as you tried your absolute best, you did great. Attitude makes a good student. As she spoke, her harsh gaze locked onto Scott again. But if someone has terrible grades, a garbage attitude, and doesn't even bother filling in the simple multiple choice questions, that student is completely hopeless. Once they finally enter society, they will just be parasitic scum, contributing absolutely nothing. "Did you hear me, Scott?" Listening to Miss Quinn's escalating insults, Khloe couldn't help but feel a massive wave of relief. Thank goodness she hadn't accepted Scott's confession earlier. She had been hanging out with Simon for the past few days, and if she hadn't, the whole class would definitely be mocking her terrible taste in men. In her mind, only a perfect, top-tier student like Simon deserved her. As for Scott, she thought he was just some shameless creep using cash to buy her affection. She believed if he had not constantly bothered her, she never would have spent his money. She even thought he intentionally embarrassed her with cash yesterday just to force her submission, knowing exactly how massive her ego truly was. She assumed he humiliated her on purpose. Her extreme pride totally forbade her from ever accepting him. Honestly, watching this girl's insane delusion is making me sick too. Are we looking at the ultimate narcissist right now? I swear. You guys need to vent about her in the comments. Just spare me, okay? While the entire classroom buzzed with juicy gossip, Scott casually propped his head up and stared straight at Miss Quinn. He said, if the final rankings drop and I am not in first place, I will happily pack my bags and leave. But if I win, you must publicly apologize for what you said today, especially since I scored a fat 0 and still acted arrogant. Miss Quinn was absolutely furious. She snapped back, fine, if you actually manage to get first place, I will apologize to you in front of the whole school at assembly today. But if you lose, you pack your bags and get the hell out of here. She was about to keep ranting when the math teacher suddenly rushed the classroom door. Miss Quinn, could you send Scott out here? She scoffed. What is wrong? Did Scott get a 0 in math too? She asked very loudly. To her total shock, the math teacher wore a very strange, almost giddy smile right then. What 0? Scott got a perfect score. What? Miss Quinn seriously doubted her own ears. And it is not just my class. Aside from losing 5 points in literature, Scott scored perfectly on every single other subject. The math teacher literally beamed with joy. The entire office is talking about him right now. But Scott handed in a completely blank English paper. Miss Quinn almost screamed out. The math teacher scratched his head. Yeah, that part confused us too. Yours is the only class he bombed. The other teachers wanted me to pull him out and ask what exactly happened. As he spoke, the math teacher happily pulled out a grade sheet. Look, if you doubt me, this is the official school ranking that the administration office just calculated, even though Scott totally took a 0 in English because he practically aced everything else. His total overall score is still a few points higher than Simon. He is the undisputed #1 student. Besides Scott, everyone else in that classroom was completely paralyzed with absolute shock right after seeing those grades. Naturally, Miss Quinn totally refused to believe that he had achieved this on his own. Scott, come to the office right now. Her entire face was dark as a thundercloud. The other subject teachers were already waiting inside. Scott, did you actually earn these grades on your own? Miss Quinn aggressively interrogated him before all the teachers. Scott just chuckled coldly, directly piercing through her pathetic excuse. You simply do not want to apologize, do you? You are trying to force me to admit I cheated too. Save your pride. Miss Quinn twitched, her tone incredibly stiff. In the last exam, you were dead last. There is no way you magically became a genius in days. Scott did not even blink. I just thought the previous tests were too easy to write. Liar, you clearly just did not know the answers at all. Bad grades aren't the issue, but using dirty tricks to cheat. To steal grades is absolutely disgusting. Miss Quinn spat the words coldly, but our boy Scott, he fired right back, admitting I'm not the garbage student you thought I was isn't shameful either, and giving a proper apology for insulting me, also not shameful. This tension absolutely boiling over. The room was practically shaking until the math teacher jumped in to mediate. True gold fears no fire. Scott, if you really got those perfect scores yourself, let us throw a few test questions at you right now. We'll see the truth. Scott stood his ground. I did it. If you think I cheated, show the evidence, he stated firmly. Miss Quinn just sneered right back. I bet you cheated. Why else are you so scared to solve them? Right in front of us. Scott wasn't having it. Stand over my shoulder and watch. Me next exam, I really don't care. You're just stalling for time now, she snapped. I've been teaching for years, and I've never met a student so absolutely shameless. Honestly, the other teachers were getting a bit suspicious of his attitude, too. But they had already checked the exam hall security footage. Scott had, in fact, written those exams himself. The cameras didn't catch a single sketchy move. Nothing. Scott stared at Miss Quinn, suddenly let out a chuckle and pivoted. Fine, I'll solve your questions right now, but if I prove I earned these grades myself, you'll get on your knees and publicly apologize to me. On what grounds? Miss Quinn's eyes completely bugged out in pure disbelief. Aren't you entirely sure? That I cheated, Scott mocked her, utter disdain in his eyes. Think a cheap provocation trick works on me. Fine, Miss Quinn practically crushed her teeth together because she completely refused to believe Scott could jump to genius tier grades in 1 week. He had to be faking it. Kneeling it is, she snapped. Solve the questions then. The rest of the faculty just exchanged nervous glances. His massive grade spike was supposed to be a total win. How did Miss Quinn twist it into this incredibly toxic showdown? Reluctantly, they handed over the backup test questions. Scott, he blitzed through every single problem, clean, fast, and flawless. With half a dozen teachers staring him down, he had absolutely zero chance to cheat. The math teacher graded his work and actually gasped in pure joy. 100% correct. The other teachers just stared at Scott, totally stunned. Mine are all perfect too. Even the literature teacher was absolutely blown away, smiling widely. His reading comprehension is so incredibly brilliant, we could literally use this as the standard answer key, but Miss Quinn, completely pale, she had set up two brutal, university-level English questions right there on the spot for him. But Scott didn't even blink at them. Miss Quinn, honor your end of the deal, he demanded, shooting her an absolute death glare. Later, at the school assembly, Miss Quinn had zero escape route. She had to apologize to Scott, fulfilling the bet. As for the nailing, facing that massive sea of students down below the stage, she just couldn't swallow her pride and do it. Once that intense assembly wrapped up, the second Scott stepped into his classroom, he got swarmed by over 12 eager students, and not just kids from class 1 either. Top rankers from other rooms showed up. Word of his insane perfect scores had spread, so they specifically rushed over for homework help, mostly girls honestly, and Scott played it super cool, being very polite and answering every single question they threw his way, watching from the sidelines. Khloe stared at Scott's glowing, absolute confidence, completely zoning out. She never imagined that Scott, the guy who used to trail her like a lost puppy all day, would suddenly transform into the school's ultimate prodigy in just a few days. Back then, if she was around, Scott wouldn't even glance at other girls. She figured he was only chatting up those girls to make her jealous. She refused to fall for it. Khloe bit her lip. The girl had massive pride. No way she was going to bow down to him. You and I know her logic here. There were plenty of guys with grades just as impressive as his. Grabbing her test paper, she marched right over to Simon's desk and deliberately raised her voice. Simon, this math test's final question is insanely hard. Could you break it down for me? She figured seeing her actively beg Simon for help would absolutely make Scott squirm, but he acted like he hadn't heard a thing, completely focused on explaining a physics problem to the girl beside him. Seeing this, heavy wave of disappointment crashed over Khloe's heart. After all, his eyes used to be glued to her 24/7. Knowing those eyes no longer belonged to her, she actually felt ridiculously uncomfortable. Simon noticed Khloe's gaze lingering on Scott, and a massive surge of anger sparked in his chest, but awkwardly enough, he had absolutely zero clue how to solve that final math question she was asking about. Sorry, I haven't quite figured out the method for this one yet. Maybe you should ask the teacher, he muttered, completely swallowing his embarrassment. Khloe looked totally shocked. Wait, aren't your math grades always amazing? I really don't No, this one, Simon felt incredibly awkward, standing up to just leave the classroom. Right at that exact moment, a girl next to Scott cheered joyfully. Wow. Really, Scott, you actually have 3 different ways to beat this final math problem, of course. Let me walk you through the absolute simplest concept for the first part. Hearing that Scott could solve the hardest problem multiple ways, many of the top math students in class instantly crowded around his desk. He welcomed them, all breaking down the problem under everyone's totally shocked eyes. Watch this. This question looks like a standard type we do every day, but if you use the standard method, you have to plug in way too many formulas, and the whole process is incredibly tedious. Scott spoke at a super steady pace, presenting a completely unique line of thought, although Khloe kept up her cold, aloof, I don't care expression on the surface. Her ears were secretly perked all the way up. Following his genius explanation, she easily solved the first part of the question. Unfortunately, right before he could finish, the class bell suddenly rang. For the entire following period, her mind was completely consumed by that frustrating half-finished math problem. She crushed the first part using his method, but she just couldn't figure out the insanely harder second part. She desperately wanted to wait for class to end so she could ask him about it, but her massive pride held her back. If she initiated the conversation, wouldn't that basically mean she was acknowledging his superiority? Besides, they were currently in a total Cold War. Her fragile dignity absolutely refused to let her be the first one to bow down. To make matters even worse, as soon as class ended, Scott immediately walked to the restroom, completely depriving anyone of the chance to ask him about the rest of the question. Finally, math class rolled back around, and the very first thing what the teacher did was explain that final problem, but honestly, his method was just way too confusing. Khloe was completely lost. She didn't grasp a single step. Half the class with lower grades were literally passing out from sheer boredom. Teacher, Scott's way of solving this is actually so much simpler. The girl who asked Scott about it earlier just couldn't help herself from speaking up. The teacher looked right at our main character, Scott. His eyes were shining with pure pride. Scott's logical approach is definitely much easier. Even I missed that brilliant trick, but remember, you guys are not Scott. He is a total math genius. During the real college exams, do you think you'll have his insane brain speed? The big test will not just throw you this one single problem. That smug girl who had just spoken up instantly went dead silent. When facing nightmare problems, do not fool yourselves into thinking you can perfectly copy Scott. Just write down whatever formulas you know. Every single step might grab you a point. Got it? The teacher's heavy praise only made everyone admire Scott way more. After math class ended, Miss Quinn marched in holding a lottery box. Next week, the entire school is hosting a massive anniversary festival. We need one guy and one girl for the main roles in a play. There is a kissing scene, but do not panic. The pros will teach you how to fake it with angles. Who wants to step up? Hearing that, the chaotic room instantly went completely dead. Total silence. Teacher, I will do it. Khloe smiled softly. She was the absolute queen of Clear Springs High. So yeah, obviously the main girl role was totally hers. Seeing Khloe volunteer, the guys in class completely lost their minds with hype. Every single guy immediately threw his hand up, desperate for that lead role. Khloe secretly felt a massive surge of smug pride inside. For a chance to act with her, these boys would absolutely go to war. But while soaking up all that attention, she turned around and saw Scott literally sleeping on his desk. He was completely ignoring all of this drama. Why wasn't Scott volunteering? That smug feeling instantly vanished. It was quickly replaced by harsh bitterness and pure frustration. Could he seriously just watch some other guy play? Her leading man, Miss Quinn, totally expected this crazy reaction. All right, since no one is fighting for female-led, Khloe wins it. As for The male lead, we are drawing lots to be fair. Every guy lined up for a slip of paper. Hearing that, Scott frowned. He was not interested. Miss Quinn instantly scolded him, looking seriously annoyed. This play is part of our class duty. Scott, do you have zero pride for this class? He stared at her, speechless and way too lazy to argue. With so many guys in the room, he figured his luck could not possibly be bad enough to win. So he walked right up and snagged a random paper. The others eagerly followed. But after the dust settled, not a single guy had pulled that leading slip. Scott, did you pull it? One anxious guy asked. He had not even bothered to check his piece yet. The guy beside him grew impatient, snagged the paper right from his hand, and uncovered pure horror. Scott was the winner. Holy crap, your luck is actually insane. You snagged it first try. The stunned guy who opened. Someone screamed in total envy. The male lead gets to kiss the female lead, right? Scott, you lucky jerk. Is he the chosen one? Damn it, they were so jealous. That's our school beauty, Khloe. The classroom erupted into pure, unfiltered chaos. Even though Scott was the one who drew the winning ticket, the boys who lost were way more excited than he was. A few troublemakers had already started hooting and cheering at Scott and Khloe. Everyone else thought he was incredibly lucky, but our guy felt like the unluckiest person on earth. Khloe's face was not looking too great either, even though their relationship had always been complicated and she constantly claimed she only saw him as a friend. The thought of actually acting in a play with him made her feel a little disgusted. Firstly, because of his looks. After all, he was currently disguised as an ugly nerd. Secondly, because he still had not apologized. She figured since Scott got the role, he definitely would not give up this chance. If he begged her nicely, maybe she would consider forgiving him. Soon, the news that he was going to star alongside Khloe in the anniversary play spread rapidly throughout the entire school. Someone even started a wild rumor that they were actually going to kiss on stage. This caused students, who initially had absolute zero interest in the school anniversary, to furiously gossip in the group chats. Damn, of all the people to pick, they got Scott. He is painful to look at. Having him play the lead was totally ruining their school beauty. That night, Simon scrolled through the chat logs, a smug smirk slowly creeping across his face. Even if he lost the exams, he thought there was no way Scott could steal his rightful spotlight. Getting good grades was not everything. He had talents far beyond studying, so the very next morning, he confidently submitted an application to Miss Quinn in front of the whole class, requesting to perform a solo piano piece at the anniversary celebration, and the track he picked was famously difficult. Simon had good grades and killer looks. You and I know this made many of the girls in class swoon completely, even though Scott explained that math problem to her. Yesterday, she admitted she still liked Simon. What could she do? Scott was not handsome at all. A guy exactly like Simon was way more suitable for a boyfriend. Do not even dream about it. Had they not seen him always orbiting around Khloe, he clearly liked the school beauty. Our main guy had absolutely zero interest in these dramatic rumors. Scott just silently marveled at how incredibly fickle his classmates were. Just yesterday, they were crowding around him with total worshipful eyes, and just because he had not cut his hair or shaved his beard, they were already jumping ship. It seemed it was finally time to find an opportunity to change his image. The anniversary celebration sounded like the absolute perfect time. Scott remembered that in his past life, Simon completely stole the show during the celebration, becoming a literal school legend overnight. Right up until the final college entrance exams, his army of toxic fangirls was constantly causing massive trouble for Scott. That was the main reason he failed the exams. But you and I know, thinking about it carefully, Serena never cared about his outward appearance at all. No matter how he looked, she was always so totally passionate and fiery. After school, Scott finally arrived back at his dorm, but the moment he pushed open the door, a chilling breeze hit his face. Immediately after, he saw an Incredibly alluring, mysterious figure sitting right on his messy bed, his eyes slowly. His gaze drifted from his roommate's dirty socks shoved under a mattress to the underwear hanging outside, then down to those highly suspicious tissues in the trash by the door. Scott's face instantly burned red, staring at Serena in utter, deep embarrassment. This woman's devastatingly gorgeous, icy face showed absolutely zero extra emotion. She just radiated this pure elite boss energy from the inside out, instantly making this messy college dorm look like a luxury hotel with her presence. Now watch this. Before he could even finish, that stunning figure swiftly closed the gap. Instantly, a face beautiful enough to conquer whole empires appeared right in front of his eyes. I heard you play the male lead opposite Khloe. She spoke casually, but Scott heard a heavy, undeniable wave of pure murderous intent in her voice, right on cue. An absolutely ruthless glint flashed through those beautiful eyes. If you insist on being with Khloe, I will straight up send her to the shadow realm. Anyone else? Just an empty threat, but this was Serena. She absolutely had both the raw power and resources to do it. Baby, I told you, you are the only woman I will ever love. It was just pure rotten luck that Scott drew the male lead role, but I swear I will absolutely not kiss Khloe during the play. Serena's scary aura finally softened a tiny bit. Really? Scott answered with direct action, planting a deeply passionate, lingering kiss right on her lips. His move was aggressive, and Serena only managed to resist for a brief moment before completely melting into it. He smoothly laid her on his bed. She had been insanely stressed for a full day and night. Now, with his firm promise, her heart finally calmed down. Very quickly, she drifted into deep sleep. Scott had just gently covered her with a blanket when the loud sound of heavy footsteps echoed right outside. It was only then that our guy suddenly realized, wait, this is a boys' dorm. If his roommates saw Serena sleeping here, they would literally never let him live it down. Having zero options left, he dove under the covers and pulled Serena tightly against his chest. 1 second later, his roommates walked in, arms slung around each other. Seeing him all bundled up in bed, they looked totally confused. Scott, why are you sleeping so early today? His buddy Ryan, holding basketball, grabbed some water while glancing at his bed. I am tired, but you have not eaten dinner yet. Why not come grab some food with us before you sleep? Another roommate offered nicely. I'm just way too exhausted today. I'm just going to sleep. You guys go eat. Scott tried his best to explain, desperately praying these guys would just mind their own business and leave. But of course, nothing ever goes as planned. Hearing his weak response, Ryan took 3 massive steps right up to the bed. Are you sick? Should we take you to the clinic? The instant those words left his mouth, Serena softly murmured in her sleep. Hearing that tiny sound, all 3 guys instantly crowded around the bed like they just discovered the universe's biggest secret, absolutely gasping in shock. Holy crap, Scott, did you bring a girlfriend back to the dorm? What girlfriend? Since when are you even dating anyone? Bro, this is so uncool. We treat you like an actual brother and you secretly sneak a girl into the dorm without saying a word. All 3 of them got louder and louder. Serena, completely sensing the annoying commotion, just tightened her grip on Scott. Sleeping Serena was the absolute complete opposite of her usual cold. Gone was her domineering CEO persona. She looked like a frightened little kitten, burying her face deep into Scott's chest. Because she hid away, none of his roommates could catch a glimpse of her face, but that stunning, flawless figure. Trust me, it was more than enough to prove she was a top-tier beauty, and absolutely not that girl Khloe he used to chase. Scott immediately shot them a look. Keep your voices down, she is fast asleep. The 3 guys traded wicked, knowing smiles. We will be quiet, but living it up behind our backs is seriously not cool. You are buying us dinner at the Grand Pavilion tonight, right? Scott just smiled helplessly. The Grand Pavilion was the exact same spot he used to take his ex to. She never knew the insane prices there, but his roommates, they definitely did. Catching his silent nod, they immediately started To cheer, Scott quickly coughed, and the three instantly zipped it quietly, following him out of the boys' dorm. On the way, they were literally vibrating with pure excitement. I have never actually eaten there before. Ryan slung an arm around Scott's shoulder, absolutely thrilled, but the other two looked a bit worried. Scott, are you seriously leaving your girl completely alone in the dorm? She has not been sleeping well lately. His bed was perfectly fine for her to rest, Scott answered. Quickly, the crew laughed and joked around, totally blind to Simon standing right in the nearby shadows. Simon had spotted Scott purely by chance, but his sharp ears caught the word girlfriend, so he quietly followed them, eavesdropping on their conversation. The truth hit him. Scott had actually sneaked a woman straight into the boys' dorm, and get this, she was fast asleep in his bed. This was a massive violation of the school rules. He immediately marched straight to the dorm admin office to snitch. I need to report an incident. A student is blatantly breaking the rules. He has a girl sleeping in his room. The dorm auntie was eating her dinner. Hearing Simon, she slammed her chopsticks down. Which room? Room 1230. That girl is still inside. If we do a check right now, we will catch them red-handed. I cannot believe there is a student in this school with guts that massive. The furious dorm auntie grabbed her master keys and stomped aggressively towards Scott's room. Simon sneered coldly, trailing right behind her. Once the auntie busted them, he would make sure the entire school knew about it. The auntie did not even bother to knock. She jammed the key in and threw the door wide open. Seeing a woman genuinely fast asleep in his bed, she angrily ripped the blanket completely away. You students are way too bold. Get up right now. Serena was actually sleeping super peacefully. In her dream, she was having a romantic candlelight dinner with Scott. The atmosphere was absolutely perfect, but suddenly, a massive hurricane ripped the roof off the restaurant and blew him away. She jolted awake, seeing Scott was gone and replaced by some strange middle-aged woman looming right over her. Serena's expression instantly turned pitch black. Scram, one single word ground out through heavily gritted teeth, carrying a crushing aura of pure, absolute authority. The dorm auntie was completely startled. She never expected this girl to be so wildly arrogant after getting caught. Do you even realize where you are right now? This is the boys' dorm. Serena narrowed her eyes, and an unimaginably icy aura erupted from her, just like a highly venomous snake ready to strike. Get the hell out. The dorm auntie's heart shuddered violently in fear. Listen to me, this girl was young, but that terrifying pressure she emitted was insane. The dorm auntie felt absolute, paralyzing fear. She didn't even dare to make eye contact, watching her actually back down from just one single sentence. Simon scrambled to pull out his phone and hit record. If you don't leave right now, I will end you. That one threat completely broke the dorm auntie. She literally backed her way out of the room. Oh, my eyes are feeling a little weird. I suddenly cannot see anything. Better go to the hospital and get this checked, she muttered, making desperate excuses as she ran off, realizing the dorm auntie was totally useless. Now watch this. Simon took his recording straight to the principal. The dorm auntie might be a total coward, but the principal is entirely different, though he was a little skeptical after hearing Simon's recording. He summoned Scott directly to his office. Scott had just finished eating dinner with his roommates and was heading back to check on Serena when he heard the principal wanted to see him. Confused but left with zero choice, he figured Serena would just have to wait a little longer. Scott, someone reported that you brought a girl back to your dorm room. Is this true? Because of his absolute perfect scores on the midterms, the principal actually spoke to him with a hint of politeness. Hearing the question, Scott paused, then chuckled, his voice dripping with heavy sarcasm. Someone sure gossips fast, so I guess he was actually telling the truth. The principal, clearly annoyed by his attitude, scolded him. Scott, even if your grades are fantastic, you need to focus on your studies. Having such a messy personal life is totally unacceptable. Principal, I only have one girlfriend. How exactly is that a messy private life? If my girlfriend hears you say That she will definitely misunderstand. He did not even try to hide it. Admitting everything wide open, this incredibly blunt response nearly gave the poor principal a full heart attack. He had run Clear Springs High for years and had never ever met a student this insanely arrogant. Scott clearly had zero respect for him. Dating, bringing a girl straight into the student dorms. These were huge violations of the basic school rules. I am calling your parents right now, suppressing his blazing fury. The principal flipped open Scott's student file. Honestly, if it were not for his perfect test scores, he would have expelled him on the spot, instead of giving him any chance to explain. Be my guest. Scott sat down on the sofa, looking completely unbothered. Serena's control over him was absolute. She had long ago changed the emergency family contact number in his file to her own phone. If the principal wanted to call the parents, he was in for a wild treat. We are about to see if a high school could actually handle the absolute force of nature that was Serena Shen. 10 minutes later, Serena finally arrived at the principal's office. Boss Serena, why are you here? The exact second the principal saw her, he literally leaped out of his chair in pure terror. This was the legendary, all-powerful CEO of the mighty Shang Corporation, Serena Shen. Not too long ago, the Shang Corporation had generously donated an entirely brand new dormitory building to Clear Springs High. To secure that massive donation, he had spent countless late nights drinking himself half to death with the Shang Corporation executives. As for Serena herself, the absolute supreme ruler of the corporation, he had only been lucky enough to catch a tiny glimpse of her once. Baby, did I wake you up? Scott stood up, gently taking Serena's hand. Serena shot the terrified principal a fleeting glance, then leaned softly against his chest, her tone totally playful. I woke up and you were gone. Thought you ran away, but turns out you broke a school rule and got dragged to the principal's office. Watching how close they were, the principal was totally stunned. Seriously, guys, how did a high school senior like Scott bag someone like Serena? Wasn't the legendary CEO supposed to be this terrifying, ruthless iceberg of a woman? So why was she acting like some love-struck teenage girl in front of him? Could the mystery woman in his dorm actually be her? The principal's eyes practically bulged out of his head, heart racing. As a seasoned adult, he saw the bigger picture. If Scott really had Serena as a girlfriend, his background must be absolutely terrifying. He had checked Scott's file and assumed he was just some average student. Clearly, he was horribly wrong. If Scott was just some normal kid, how on earth could a powerhouse like Serena be interested? He had to be the hidden young master of some ultra-elite family just experiencing normal life. Boss Serena, I'm so sorry. I had no clue the girl young Master Scott brought back was you. Please forgive me. He panicked, sweating bullets, because if he upset Serena, that massive school donation he desperately needed would vanish into thin air. Serena just laughed, totally ice cold. What I paid for that dorm is staying there for a single night, breaking the rules. Her voice dripped with absolute crushing pressure. The poor principal's legs were violently shaking now. No, it's not that Scott broke any rules. It is entirely my fault for not explaining things properly. If you cannot speak clearly, maybe you are no longer fit to sit in that chair, Serena remarked. The principal broke out in a cold sweat, ready to drop to his knees. Then pure survival instinct kicked in. He eagerly spoke up. Actually, I invited you here today to discuss assigning a special couples dorm just for you and Scott. That way it will be much more convenient for you two to live together. What do you say? We can set it up in that new building your company donated. The environment is gorgeous and freshmen have not moved in yet. It is perfectly quiet with zero interruptions. Hearing this, Scott frowned. You and I know a dorm was still right on campus. It was nothing compared to Serena's luxury villa. Plus, the dorms were always packed with students. In his past life, Scott knew Serena absolutely despised living in crowded places. That was why her villa was totally Secluded, even in the bustling city center, she had carved out this isolated, peaceful paradise. Scott was just about to reject the principal's offer for her, when her smooth voice echoed in his ear, "All right, expect me to move in tonight." Serena looked up at him, and those bewitching eyes of hers, they were completely filled with this intense, dark possessiveness. Scott just sighed internally. Serena was as overwhelming as ever. Meanwhile, Simon waited forever but saw absolutely zero reaction from the school discipline committee. While he sat there confused, a message popped into the group chat. "Did you guys hear? Scott moved dorms and he moved in with a beautiful woman." Someone posted a photo. It only captured dark silhouettes, but the girl standing next to Scott clearly had a tiny waist and long legs, undeniably an absolute bombshell. Simon's eyes went wide in rage. Why did his evil report fail? Clear Springs High had famously strict rules, and the school never gave anyone special treatment, so why did they not only skip punishing him? Nope, they actually let him live with her. Why get this insane special treatment? The haters were fuming. Resentment and absolute fury spread like total wildfire in their hearts. The very next day, Scott headed to morning study just like usual, but since his rebirth, his senses had become crazy sharp, way before even walking through that classroom door. Our MC noticed a basin of filthy water balanced precariously on the frame. He immediately stopped dead and glanced at Miss Quinn, who was hurrying down the hall right behind him. Inside the room, two girls whispered, "Why isn't Scott coming in? I just saw him heading this way." Sure enough, the heavy footsteps got closer. The door pushed open from the outside, then splash. That entire basin of disgusting water poured straight down. But when the students finally saw who actually walked in, every single laugh choked off instantly. The entire classroom plunged into dead silence. A totally bizarre, terrifying atmosphere filled the room, soaked in dirty mop water for zero reason. Miss Quinn's eyes practically shot literal fire. She stormed inside and violently slammed her heavy textbook right onto the podium. Smack. "You have 1 minute. If nobody confesses in 1 minute, I am checking those security cameras, and when I find the culprit, you will face the absolute worst consequences imaginable." Threatened by her intense rage, a student named Fiona stood up, trembling like a leaf. "So it was you. Stand in the hallway right this second. Office after class." See, Fiona was actually the class secretary, someone who obsessed over justice and absolutely hated anybody getting special privileges. She totally wanted to use that dirty water to teach Scott a lesson, never expecting to splash their terrifying teacher instead, knowing Miss Quinn's fiercely vindictive personality. Yeah, Fiona's life was about to become a living hell for the entire semester. Fiona walked out looking utterly, totally defeated, and after Miss Quinn finished her massive tantrum, Scott finally strolled into the classroom. "Hey Scott, look." At the school forum, Ryan whispered. Scott opened the app, totally confused. The front page was completely plastered with posts attacking him. They claimed our guy openly violated school rules, using his top grades to literally strongarm the principal into giving him a couple's dorm. That main post already had hundreds of nasty comments and 2,000 likes. It seemed like practically everyone in the whole school had seen it. The comments were packed with people condemning Scott and Serena. "Man, Scott is going way too far. Who brings their girlfriend to live on campus during high school and makes the staff give him special privileges? Wait a minute, wasn't Scott desperately chasing Khloe, the girl? That photo definitely does not look like Khloe. Scott has trash taste, giving up the school beauty for some random. Can she even compare to Khloe?" But the poster hadn't just stopped there. They added a massive pile of disgusting rumors, claiming his private life was completely degenerate, and that the mysterious woman he brought back was dirty. Ryan sent our MC a direct message. "I tried defending you in the comments, but the original poster instantly deleted my replies. Now everyone in school thinks you are the absolute ultimate villain. The three of us do not even dare talk to you publicly." Scott looked up, meeting Ryan's deeply worried eyes. "See, last night the principal was so terrified of Serena that he immediately spilled all the beans. The person who actually reported Scott was Simon. Clearly, Simon got furious his little report failed and threw a massive tantrum online. In his past life, Simon had always maintained this perfect facade of a flawless student. Even when that jerk stole Khloe from Scott, he acted like he felt so completely guilty. Simon wasn't nearly as sneaky back then. Scott threw a suspicious glance at Simon's desk, and sure enough, the guy was secretly watching. Scott, a totally smug grin plastered on his face. Their eyes locked, and Simon's smile froze instantly. He guiltily jerked his head away. Yep, it was him, Scott sneered, coldly marching straight over to that desk. The crowd waiting to see Scott get absolutely humiliated went totally silent, watching them nervously. What are you doing? Meeting Scott's terrifying, icy glare, Simon totally lost his nerve. You are the guy who made that forum post, aren't you? Scott asked point blank, but before Simon could even open his mouth, Scott's fist introduced itself to his face. The surrounding students screamed in total shock, instinctively scrambling backward to avoid getting caught in the crossfire. Before Simon could even process that first punch, Scott hit him again. With a massive crash, he hit the floor, taking his chair right down with him. Miss Quinn was absolutely horrified. Scott, how dare you? Simon grabbed his bleeding nose, pure, unfiltered disbelief plastered across his face. The teacher was literally standing right there. This is a massive violation. Isn't he terrified of getting expelled? Scott would worry about expulsion only after he was done. He ruthlessly kicked Simon, raining brutal punches down on him without any mercy. You see, in his past life, Scott watched him steal Khloe away. Back then, he only hated his own total uselessness. He had given absolutely everything, but in Khloe's heart, he never even compared to Simon. But now, Scott knew the ugly truth. Khloe and Simon were exactly the same kind of trash. You cannot show mercy to people like them. Simon shrieked endlessly under Scott's savage barrage, completely unable to fight back. The rest of the class was utterly dumbstruck. In the past, Scott was the ultimate coward. Whenever people bullied him, he wouldn't even let out a squeak. Nobody expected him to be this vicious. He only stopped when Simon was utterly incapable of fighting back, allowing a few stunned classmates to finally pull him away. Miss Quinn rushed over, completely furious. Scott, you dared to brutally assault a classmate in public. A beating is getting off light. Scott just sneered, looking totally unbothered, basically saying, what are you going to do about it? I am reporting this to the administration right now. Get ready to face severe disciplinary action. Miss Quinn snapped, her chest practically heaving with blind rage. Go ahead, and while you are at it, tell the whole school that Simon was the guy who made that forum post. Scott calmly reached down and pulled out Simon's phone, and sure enough, the idiot hadn't even logged out of his anonymous burner account yet. Oh, and when you see the principal, remind him about the bet where you promised to kneel and apologize to me. Have the school make sure you actually follow through. Miss Quinn's face stiffened up instantly, but refusing to lose face in front of Scott, she acted incredibly tough. Just you wait. With that, she stormed right out of the classroom. Immediately, Miss Quinn uploaded the security footage of Scott thrashing Simon into the parents' group chat and angrily tagged his parents. Take a look at Scott's completely violent behavior at school. I expect you to discipline him severely before he becomes a total menace to society. After sending that message, she felt a little better, already happily fantasizing about Scott getting a vicious beating from his parents. But here is the crazy part, folks. His guardian was actually Serena, and at that exact moment, she was lounging gracefully. Serena was chilling on her sofa until a sudden notification broke the silence. She grabbed her phone, clicking the video, seeing Scott look so wildly rebellious, absolutely untamed. Honestly, Serena was totally mesmerized. It had been ages since she saw Scott looking that fiercely confident. She replayed that clip several times, saving it straight to her favorites. Then she called her assistant, Look into this guy. Serena casually tossed her phone onto the coffee table. The screen paused right on Simon's battered face, under 10 minutes later. Her assistant had dug up literally every single detail of Simon's pathetic life. Scott's flawless test scores completely overshadowed him, so, driven by pure bitter jealousy, Simon posted anonymously on the school forum, totally slandering Serena and our boy Scott. Scott got furious and taught him a brutal lesson, hearing all this. Serena opened the Clear Springs High forum, "You and I know what's coming," countless posts calling Scott a massive playboy, complaining that bringing a girl to a couple's dorm was just completely outrageous. And yeah, the top pin post was the exact one Simon wrote. Now, these students had no clue who Serena actually was, but they hated Scott. Led by this anonymous troll, they started spreading nasty rumors that she was just some loose woman. Serena tapped her fingers hard against the coffee table, a terrifying storm brewing in those beautiful eyes. Cut to that afternoon. Staff in pristine uniforms drove a massive delivery truck right into Clear Springs High with insane fanfare. The principal flipped on the school PA system, and a super professional female voice echoed across the campus. "Hello students, I am Joy, the executive assistant to the CEO of Xi Technology. We have prepared some small gifts for everyone here. We hope you enjoy them. At the same time, on behalf of Xi Technology, I need to clarify that the new dormitories here at Clear Springs High were entirely funded and built by our company, so as the boyfriend of our CEO, it is completely reasonable for student Scott to get priority privileges when picking out his dorm. But hey, for anyone feeling this was somehow unfair, GE Technology is offering this gift as compensation." While the loud announcement kept playing, company staff members were already handing out these boxes in every single classroom. The students were absolutely stunned learning Scott's girl was the legendary CEO of GE Tech. But watch this, they went totally crazy opening those gifts. It was GE Tech's latest flagship folding smartphone, retail price, over $1,500, and it was so insanely popular you could not even buy one anywhere. Yet here they were, being handed out completely for free. In Scott's classroom, the same students who loudly gossiped seconds ago instantly zipped their lips. "Bro, your girlfriend is way too generous. We totally struck gold through you." Ryan gently stroked his new phone, basically crying pure tears of joy. "I cannot believe you secretly bagged a billionaire sugar mommy. Back that night we missed her face. Tell us, is she pretty's like prettier than Khloe? Man, without you, we would never be able to afford a phone this nice." His two roommates yelled loudly on purpose. Khloe definitely heard every word, her expression turning incredibly ugly. In the entire classroom, only she and Simon got skipped for a phone, even though Scott had bought her similar phones before. This was the absolute newest model. It was literally impossible not to crave it, but the staff handing them out, whether intentionally or not, they completely bypassed Khloe and Simon, despite them being absolutely furious. Remembering Serena's true identity made Khloe swallow her bitter complaints. Having hung around Scott for years, she knew exactly who Serena really was. Xi Tech was massive, but the Shang family name, that terrified everyone. Honestly, between you and me, the only reason Khloe was even attending this elite academy was completely because of Scott. He had fought a massive war with his sister Serena, practically starving himself just to force her to arrange Khloe's acceptance. Remembering that, Khloe's beautiful eyes suddenly flickered. She instinctively looked at Scott, her chest tightening with deep regret. He used to forgive her for absolutely everything. Why was he acting so cold now? Why was he giving her this endless silent treatment? Soon, the entire senior class got their brand new phones. Online, every single post attacking Scott completely vanished without a trace. Simon's account got permanently banned by the moderators, but the wild rumors about Scott and Serena definitely did not stop. The school forum was totally blowing up. Students hoped Scott and the executive lived happily. No. Wonder he scored a private dorm, their new track field and science. Building were funded by Zytec too, plus the new library. They were the Academy's biggest financial backer. Scott got rejected by the campus beauty and instantly bagged a billionaire executive. Smart guy, but holding that title she must be. Pretty ancient, right? Poor Scott, trading a gorgeous young student for some middle-aged sugar mama. Who cares if she is older? Scott just skipped 20 years of endless grinding. We'd probably do it too. As the staff left, Simon limped into the room on crutches. His face was completely battered, a brutal contrast to his usual handsome, arrogant vibe. The girls felt absolutely heartbroken seeing him like this. Simon had no idea she ran Zytec. Scott went way too far, getting his bones broken right before finals would definitely ruin his test scores. The Academy had to punish Scott. People are visual creatures, and between Scott and Simon, they heavily favored Simon's charming face. Hearing the girls defending him, Simon faked a gentle, tragic smile. He claimed yesterday's mess was entirely his own reckless mistake. They couldn't blame Scott for getting violent. Hearing his soft, gentle voice, the girls completely melted. They insisted Scott still owed him a massive public apology. Saying that, the crowd turned to glare directly at Scott. If he just sincerely apologized, they were sure Simon would forgive him. Scott turned, sweeping a freezing, deadly glare over the room, spotting the brand new luxury phones resting on their desks. Our guy let out a dark chuckle. The girls instantly flushed with deep embarrassment. They had literally just accepted an expensive gift from Scott's girlfriend, and now they were demanding he apologize. It was just incredibly hypocritical. If they cared about Simon so much, they could return the phones. He raised an eyebrow, totally mocking them. The girls instantly shut up, though they still looked bitter. Stick with me here. Scott just turned and walked right out. Khloe watched him leave and quietly followed, finally catching up at the main academy gate. Scott, you really went too far this time. She bit her lip, looking highly annoyed, staring at Khloe's angry expression. Scott's mind immediately flashed back to his previous life when she had stood right in front of him, defending Simon, because he genuinely loved her then. He swallowed his pride and took the humiliation. But things were different now. I thought you came here to pay back the cash you. Oh, Scott sneered, stabbing right at her sore spot. Khloe's face totally froze, her body trembling slightly, but eventually she straightened her back and just glared right at him. With stubborn pride, I know you're just mad at me. You're jealous that I chose to hang out with Simon, so you're targeting him. Scott was just completely speechless. He had no idea where she got the sheer audacity to say something so delusional. Was this the legendary supreme narcissist? I don't care who you hang out with as long as it's not me. It makes me sick. Khloe's face turned even uglier, acting like she hadn't heard a single word he said. She continued, I know you're just saying these things out of anger, but I swear I treat you and him exactly the same. I just see both of you as good friends. Hearing this, Scott's rage meter absolutely skyrocketed. In his past life, when Khloe met Simon, she spouted this exact same garbage, and back then, his brain was so totally clueless that he actually believed her. Oh, does he also lend you money every other day? Does he pay for all your food, clothes, and transportation? Do you constantly hold your hand out asking him for cash? Khloe's eyes widened in absolute shock. Scott, why are you being so materialistic? You can't go 3 sentences without talking about money. Is money really that important to you? Not important at all. Then just give it to me, ma'am. Scott completely lost his patience and blurted out. Khloe froze in place. It took her a long time to realize he was actually calling her a crazy middle-aged woman. By the time she snapped out of it, he had completely vanished. Having no choice, she stomped back to the classroom, fuming. Meanwhile, those girls were still crowded around Simon, continuously condemning Scott and saying he was a total monster. Simon smiled gently, constantly saying nice things about him, which honestly only made everyone think he was incredibly mature and forgiving. but get this, at that exact moment, Scott casually walked back into the classroom, the previously chatting group. Instantly went dead silent. He walked swiftly to Simon's desk, lit a small firecracker and tossed it right onto his desk. Simon jumped out of his skin, instantly leaping up and sprinting to the other side of the room. By the time he realized what had actually happened, the entire class was staring at him. Simon, I thought I beat you half to death. You sure healed fast. Scott laughed coldly. He had hit him hard yesterday, sure, but he intentionally avoided any vital areas. Whether Simon had actually broken any bones, Scott knew better than he did. The girls who had been defending him saw this and silently slunk back to their seats. What the heck? He faked his injuries just to get sympathy. That's so manipulative. Wait, does that mean he really posted that stuff on the forum on purpose? I actually thought he was a nice guy. The crowd began whispering furiously. Right then, Miss Quinn walked in holding her lesson plans. What's all this noise? Get ready for class. Seeing the firecracker residue on Simon's desk, she frowned and waved her hand to clear the smell of gunpowder. Simon, why are you setting off firecrackers in the classroom? Don't you know that's dangerous? Teacher, it wasn't me. Simon suddenly found his voice, looking at Scott with intense grievance. He did it. Everyone tensed up, assuming Scott was absolutely doomed. Every time Miss Quinn caught him acting out, she would just scream at him. Writing lines and standing in the corner, those were light punishments, but stick with me. The class wasn't anxious, they were hyped. Watching our guy suffer was their absolute favorite show, even though his grades were totally flawless now. Senior class 1 just could not break their old habits. For 3 whole years he had been their resident punching bag, always providing endless laughs, whether Miss Quinn was publicly humiliating him or he was getting brutally rejected by Khloe. But here is the wild twist. Miss Quinn just frowned and stated calmly, let us begin class. Simon was totally speechless. She was blatantly protecting our MC. Seeing this massive attitude shift, the whole class realized she knew his background was insanely powerful and was actively trying to get on his good side. When the bell finally rang, she did not leave. Instead, she dropped some major news. After the next exam, the school will pick a few top-tier students with perfect character to be granted direct admission to Tsinghua University. She then turned to look right at him. Her meaning was obvious. You all must study hard. This chance is incredibly rare, and if you miss it, you will regret it for the rest of your lives. Khloe noticed Miss Quinn's face and instantly realized that the teacher definitely wanted to hand this golden ticket straight to our MC. Tsinghua was the best college in the whole country, the ultimate dream for every student. If she took the entrance exams normally, she could literally study for 100 lifetimes and still never get in. But if she begged Miss Quinn to use it to repair her bond with the MC, Miss Quinn would definitely agree. Khloe was absolutely totally convinced that if she swallowed her pride and bowed her head to him just once, he would easily give up the spot for her. She actually believed his recent cold shoulder was just him throwing a petty tantrum, since he was waiting for her to finally submit. For the sake of that admission ticket, she would bow down. Just this one time, that very evening, she quietly snuck over to his dorm room. Since it was the new building, the halls were totally empty, and she slipped right in easily. But just as she reached to knock, we hear strange noises echoing from inside, the sounds of a woman making sweet complaints and heavy breathing mixing together. Baby, is 1 hour enough for today? His breathless voice echoed right back. No, 2 hours, not a minute more. Khloe instantly understood exactly what was happening inside that room. Her face burned bright red, her whole body freezing totally stiff. She actually thought he used Serena to make her jealous, but those intense rhythmic sounds coming from the room made her feel entirely suffocated. She wanted to turn and run, but for some reason her legs just refused to move. Who knows how long passed before those sounds finally subsided. Inside, Serena lay in his arms, her gorgeous face flushed a beautiful pink. She put on a fake tough expression and warned him, during tomorrow's anniversary play, you are absolutely not allowed to make any physical contact with Khloe, otherwise you will not get any sleep tomorrow night, he laughed, teasing her back. Baby, I do not mind skipping sleep tonight either, but 2 hours of cardio is your absolute limit. You have a board meeting tomorrow morning. Any longer and you will have trouble walking again and it will totally mess up your work. As for Khloe, she is not even a tiny fraction as beautiful as you. Outside the door, Khloe. Khloe shudders violently. She just cannot take it anymore, covering her ears, her face burning bright red. She stumbles and runs away. Honestly, you and I both know this type of crazy drama is exactly why we are watching such an insufferable character, right? She is wildly overconfident, deeply annoying, and absolutely loves eavesdropping. But anyway, back to the actual story. Khloe runs all the way back to her dorm in one single breath, staring at her red, puffy eyes. In the mirror, she touches her face. She feels incredibly wronged. The harsh words Scott had just said to Serena keep echoing in her mind. Does Scott actually think she is not as pretty as Serena? Is her face really that ugly? She stares in the mirror for a long time, but the longer she looks, the louder his words become, echoing like a dark curse in her head. Meanwhile, Serena and Scott finally finish their battle. He steps right out of the dorm. He heads to the communal washroom next door to wash up. Since this is the brand new dorm building, absolutely nobody uses this washroom. Over in the old dorms, there is always a massive line, especially for the girls. Fiona is having a terrible day, and there are 10 girls lined up for the bathroom. Clutching her stomach, she stamps her feet in pure agony. A friend whispers the washrooms in the new dorms are completely empty. Just sneak over there right now. Nobody is looking, no one will even care. Fiona groans heavily. Fine, she simply cannot hold it anymore. Clutching her stomach, she literally sprints downstairs. Thankfully, the two buildings are right next to each other, just as her friend promised. The washroom here is completely empty. After freshening up, Fiona sighs in total relief and turns on the tap to wash her hands, but looking up, she unexpectedly locks eyes with a face in the mirror. In that exact moment, the entire world goes dead quiet. The only sound is her own heart hammering against her ribs. This young guy has incredibly handsome, perfectly refined features. His dark, clear eyes seem to hold sparkling stars. His face is clean and totally elegant, making anyone feel refreshed like a cool spring breeze just by looking at him. He is honestly even more handsome than Simon. This face right here is the literal embodiment of her ultimate dream boyfriend. But wait a minute, the only person living here is Fiona stares at the thick, incredibly ugly black glasses resting right next to the sink. It takes her a long time to process this madness. Wait, are you Scott? Scott gives Fiona a freezing look. He picks up his glasses with a totally blank expression and turns to leave. Wait. You never told me if you are Scott, so this is what you actually look like. Since you are this handsome, why do you always have that awful haircut and wear those ugly glasses? Annoyed by her noise, Scott snaps impatiently. He has totally unique aesthetic tastes. Yeah, right. Anyway, the next day, Khloe arrives at class with puffy, red eyes. For the entire morning, she is completely out of it. Her gaze keeps constantly drifting over toward Scott. As class is about to start, the empty seats fill up one by one until only Fiona is missing. The entire classroom starts whispering, Fiona is never late. What happened? I heard Miss Quinn actually punished her by making her clean the school bathrooms for the rest of the semester. She is doomed. That really sucks. Fiona is definitely not going to let Scott off the hook. That dirty water was originally meant for him. She must be absolutely furious. Just as they keep gossiping, the classroom door swings open. Fiona walks right in, completely expressionless. She walks straight over to Scott's desk and drops a massive bag of snacks on his desk, and you guys, he completely ignored the shocked stares filling the room. Walked calmly back to her seat. Scott was totally baffled, highly suspicious. He Grabbed the bag, checking it carefully to make sure no dead rat was inside. Or something worse before dropping it by his desk. Soon that bell rang. He reached inside his desk for his textbook. Nothing. It was completely empty. Hey, Scott. Use mine for now. Fiona suddenly dumped all her textbooks right onto his desk. She stood tall and announced to the entire class, whoever stole textbooks from Scott, return them right now. From this moment on, Scott is my man. Nobody is allowed to bully him. You mess with him, you mess with me. Her tone carried a seriously heavy threat. The entire classroom went dead silent. Nobody had a clue what got into Fiona. Scott was totally confused. He asked a quick question. How exactly did I become your man? Weren't you trying to dump dirty water on my head just yesterday? I like you. Fiona looked at him, speaking every single word with absolute deadly seriousness. Now, Fiona wasn't exactly stunningly gorgeous like Khloe, but she was definitely beautiful, especially with that tiny waist and very generous proportions. Even that baggy school uniform could not hide her figure. But wait, I already have a girlfriend, Scott told her. Is she prettier than me? Fiona was super confident in her looks. She knew she lacked Khloe's vibe, but compared to some older female boss, she was definitely winning. You are very pretty, Scott replied, but compared to my girlfriend, you are still lacking quite a bit, he told the absolute truth here. Fiona looked completely unconvinced. She thought this was all just an excuse he invented to reject her. The classroom erupted into pure chaos. Scott actually said his girlfriend is prettier than Fiona. Listen to this guy brag. How good-looking can some older woman be? Fiona must have completely lost her mind. Why is she chasing a loser like Scott? Now watch this. At noon, Khloe skipped lunch and went straight to the theater rehearsal room. She had already made up her mind completely. As long as Scott got on his knees, apologized, and admitted his fake relationship with Serena was totally fake, she would generously allow him to kiss her on the cheek during rehearsal. But to her shock, over half an hour passed before our boy finally strolled in late. The drama teacher looked seriously unhappy. Scott, why are you so late? Sorry, teacher, I ate a bit too much for lunch. Scott said this while holding a massive leek and garlic steamed bun right in his hand. The moment he opened his mouth, a devastatingly strong wave of raw garlic and leeks hit Khloe directly in the face. She instantly broke out in absolute goosebumps. These were her two absolute most hated foods ever. Just the smell alone made her want to vomit. She immediately backed up several steps. Teacher, his breath smells exactly like literal garbage. How is he supposed to play the male lead? Khloe pinched her nose and fake gagged. What if I throw up during the performance? Fine, we will just replace the male lead. Hurry up and practice. The stressed teacher snapped impatiently. Hearing those harsh words, Scott nodded immediately. Great, absolutely no problem. Without another word, he turned right around and walked out. The moment he stepped out of that rehearsal room, a pair of pale, soft arms wrapped right around his neck. A woman smelling of super expensive perfume tangled herself around him, planting a satisfied kiss right on his lips. You do not think I stink? He asked, his heart fluttering. He wrapped his arms around that impossibly slender, gorgeous, holding her soft waist. Serena kissed him again, playfully tracing her lips. Just that single move was enough to bring any guy to his knees. Even Scott froze for a second. He deliberately leaned in close, breathing heavily against her face. Serena raised a hand to smack him, but he easily caught her wrist. He had eaten 2 whole heads of raw garlic for lunch. Don't you feel bad for me? He faked a totally pitiful look. Now you and I know that with Khloe. Scott was utterly pathetic. He never dared to joke around, terrified of making her mad. But with Serena, he was completely relaxed. He honestly couldn't even tell anymore if that careful, desperate, begging love he had for Khloe in his past life was real love, or if this urge to constantly tease Serena, wanting to see this fiercely dominant woman lose her mind and beg for mercy in bed, was what true love actually felt like. Their eyes locked for a split second, and they soon found themselves passionately making out again. Meanwhile, since a replacement actor hadn't been found yet, Khloe had to grab lunch alone. Arriving at this cafeteria, she spotted Simon smiling and waving. "Khloe, over here. I already bought your food." She slowly sat down beside him, but when she looked at the tray, she totally froze. She muttered in obvious annoyance, "Why is there leek and egg stir fry? I hate this dish." Simon looked super awkward. "But I asked your roommate and she said you order this all the time. It was only right then." That Khloe belatedly realized something. The guy sitting across from her was Simon, not Scott. "Sorry about that. Thanks for getting my food," she forced an awkward smile, but in the past, when Scott bought her lunch, she never had to say thank you at all. If the food wasn't perfect, she would literally throw a massive tantrum. Smelling the leeks, Khloe frowned in pure absolute disgust. She loved scrambled eggs but absolutely hated leeks. The big problem was the school cafeteria only sold them mixed together. In the past, whenever she ordered this, she would just force Scott to pick all the leeks out of her bowl. She quietly studied Simon's face. He already looked pretty annoyed that she had complained about the free food. If she asked him to pick the leeks out and eat them right now, he would probably get furious and just leave, wanting to maintain her good relationship with Simon. Since he was basically the most popular guy in their year, she had no choice but to lower her head and quietly, painstakingly push the leeks over to the edge of the tray. Smelling those awful leeks, her heart felt incredibly sour. It was such an indescribable feeling. If only Scott were here. The thought bubbled up fast, but she instantly shoved it down. The harder she tried not to think about how Scott used to eat her leeks, the more those heavy memories flooded back. Khloe suddenly realized something. Wait, let's be real. Scott hates leeks too. At first he had actively volunteered to eat them, acting like it was the most delicious thing in the entire world, which made her assume he loved them, so she always dumped them on him. Until one time after lunch, she left early without waiting for him at all. Realizing she forgot her bag, she came back to the cafeteria only to find Scott sitting at the table, violently throwing up all the leeks he had just forced down. Back at the time, she just thought he looked completely disgusting, grabbed her bag and left without saying a single word of comfort. Later on, even though she knew he hated them, she honestly didn't care. She figured since he liked her, he should suffer for her. Scott was finally done suffering for her, and Khloe, she was suddenly panicking. Wait. If Scott absolutely hated leeks, why did he eat a massive garlic leek bun for lunch today? Was it totally on purpose? Did he do it just to dodge acting with her? You and I both know Khloe's mind was an absolute mess right now. They were supposed to kiss in this play. Did he literally eat garlic to avoid kissing her? Did he actually not like her anymore? Khloe was officially losing it. She desperately needed to find Scott and demand answers. I mean, even if someone backed out of the play, it should be her rejecting him, not the other way around. Right, kissing her was every guy's ultimate dream at this school. So why was he refusing? This was pure, unadulterated humiliation for her. She couldn't take it. 2 hasty bites of rice later, she shot up and totally abandoned Simon in the cafeteria. She needed an explanation right now. Khloe hunted through the whole school, but Scott was nowhere. Fuming with anger, she stormed right back to the rehearsal room, but the second she walked in, there he was, but the guy standing there looked completely different from the Scott she knew. Honestly, if his thick, ugly glasses weren't resting on the table, she never would have connected this insanely gorgeous aristocrat to the total loser she used to know. He was wearing an elegant European noble costume. That gorgeous white suit with gold trim fit him perfectly, highlighting his broad shoulders and long legs. He looked like a literal prince teleported straight out of history. Totally out of place in this normal world, radiating sheer nobility. And right now he was practicing lines with another girl. "Teacher, what is happening?" "I thought Scott quit," Khloe asked, totally confused. The teacher just rolled her eyes. Pure annoyance. "You seriously have the nerve to ask? I texted you to practice and you Vanished all afternoon. Plus, the new guy we found couldn't memorize his lines to save his life. I had to beg Scott to return, and since you said Scott's breath made you literally sick, I just replaced you. Scott looked over. Right at that moment, seeing him fully styled, Khloe was completely stunned again, like he was a totally different guy with a perfect nose and deep eyes, standing. Under those bright stage lights, he was practically glowing. She came here to interrogate him, but watch this, she instantly lost herself staring at his face. Right. She was the one who forced him to dress ugly, proving his loyalty to her in front of Serena. She wanted to test his devotion, and he had actually agreed. He kept up that awful disguise for so long, she genuinely forgot what he really looked like underneath. If she could act alongside this version of him, that wouldn't be bad at all. An image of her kissing him in that princely outfit flashed in her mind, and her face instantly burned beet red. Khloe, if you refuse to act with Scott, I won't force you. You can leave. The teacher's sharp voice completely shattered her fantasy. But teacher, the new girl hasn't practiced at all. She'll ruin the entire play. Khloe desperately scrambled for excuses. That girl standing next to Scott looks like a total bumpkin. She can't be the female lead. It's fine. The female lead barely has any lines anyway. How bad could it possibly be? The teacher brushed her off completely. Khloe bit her lip, glared, and said firmly, I don't want to give up this role. I truly cherish this opportunity. Please let me do it. The teacher gave Khloe a seriously confused look. Didn't you claim his breath made you sick? Khloe swore she could handle it. Zero hesitation. The teacher just sighed and waved her off. Fine, go to the dressing room and get changed. You are up soon. Khloe's face absolutely lit up with pure joy. Snatching the princess dress, she practically sprinted away. That college freshman girl they had drafted as a backup heard Khloe wanted the role back. She could only walk away totally disappointed. Before leaving, she cast a serious, longing glance at Scott. She had no clue the seniors hid such a gorgeous guy. You and I know the feeling. Too bad they aren't sharing a college. Meanwhile, Scott watched Khloe strut away, his face twisting in total disgust. Was the garlic and leek breath combo somehow not enough? Khloe hugged the dress, walking right into the dressing room with absolute glee. But the second she removed her jacket, a freezing breeze hit the back of her neck, like a literal ghost. Serena appeared right behind her. The sharp dagger in her hand glinted with freezing light. I told you, do not touch my man. Her voice was pure ice as her hand clamped tight on the back of Khloe's neck. If there is a next time, I won't just be threatening you. Khloe was so utterly terrified, her whole body convulsed. She almost collapsed. Serena, what are you doing here? The girl was practically fainting from absolute fear. She could feel it. Serena was not making empty threats. If she got any closer to Scott, Serena would absolutely send her straight to the afterlife. Before Khloe could even process the horror, Serena violently shoved her backward against the wall. That sharp impact made Khloe's legs totally give out, and she crumbled to the floor. Serena smoothly pulled out a prepared length of rope and ruthlessly tied Khloe up. If you tie me up, who is acting in the play without a female lead, Scott is going to be utterly humiliated on stage. Khloe screamed, totally fueled by desperate anger. Serena paused, actually stopping to seriously consider the problem. Who should play the female lead? Khloe relaxed a fraction. She knew Serena well enough, a high and mighty elite boss would absolutely never lower herself to perform on some high school stage like some dancing monkey. Her massive pride and billionaire status would never allow it. The supreme ruler of the capital's strongest family acting in a random high school play for cheap laughs, ridiculous. Soon the anniversary performance officially began. Many hyped students out in the audience brought cameras just to capture Scott kissing Khloe. Stick with me. When their turn hit, the stage lights abruptly cut out. Scott stepped onto the stage under those breathtakingly beautiful spotlights. Our guy dressed in that classic European aristocratic uniform Looked incredibly handsome, literally like he just stepped out of a time machine. It was as if he carried a whole century of history, radiating this noble, icy elegance that felt totally out of place in our modern world. For one moment, the entire audience sat completely mesmerized. It took a long beat before people finally started realizing what was going on, especially the students from senior Class 1. Wait, is that Scott? He is actually this handsome. He literally leaves Simon completely in the dust. Honestly, looking like that, he is way out of Khloe's league. Fiona snorted quietly. Khloe is not nearly good enough for him, she muttered, her eyes locked dead onto his glowing figure up on stage. But a long time ticked by. Stick with me here. The atmosphere in the auditorium got unbearably awkward. People whispered, where is the female lead? Did she bail because Scott was playing the main role? But honestly, Scott looked absolutely stunning right now. Then, cutting right through the confused whispers, wildly gorgeous, practically enchanting figure slowly stepped out from the shadows and onto the main stage. The entire auditorium held its breath as the bright spotlight shifted over. This wasn't Khloe stepping into the light, but Serena herself. She wore an absolutely breathtaking custom midnight blue dress that made the school's original princess costume look like pure trash. Her famously cold, stunning face now carried a soft, totally intoxicating smile. Directed only at him, the crowd instantly exploded into crazy whispers, finally recognizing this impossibly gorgeous woman from those leaked dorm pictures. The billionaire CEO of Zytec. She glided across the stage with pure elegance. She took his hand and he pulled her close. His heart swelled with pure devotion. They threw the script away. The chemistry radiating between them was electric, palpable, and 100% real. When the huge climax hit, they didn't need clever camera tricks or any fake acting. He dipped her gracefully, and their lips locked in a crazy, passionate, lingering kiss. That single moment sent the whole auditorium into an absolute uproar of wild cheers. Meanwhile, tied up and gagged in the dusty corner of the dressing room, Khloe heard those explosive cheers echoing through the thin walls. Tears of pure regret and bitter humiliation streamed right down her face. She finally realized that the loyal guy who used to endure her awful treatment was gone forever. She tossed a literal diamond just to chase a useless pebble. When Khloe was eventually found by the cleaning staff hours later, her arrogant pride was shattered completely. By the very next week, his legal team officially served her family with a massive lawsuit. They demanded back every single penny she had stolen from him over those years, from hospital bills to expensive concert tickets. Crushed by huge debt and totally suffocating social isolation, Khloe was basically forced to drop out of school. Simon didn't do any better either, completely exposed as a toxic fraud who totally faked his injuries just for cheap sympathy. He faced massive disciplinary action, stripped of his fake perfect student image. He was totally abandoned by the girls who once worshipped him. With all that toxic past life garbage completely wiped out, our boy focused on what really mattered. He easily locked down that direct admission to Jinhua University. Of course, Serena casually bought a massive luxury penthouse right next to the campus, just so they wouldn't have to spend a single night apart. Fast forward, you and I see them standing on the balcony of their penthouse. He wrapped his arms right around Serena's waist as she leaned comfortably back into his embrace. She was no longer just that cold iceberg CEO feared by everyone. She was his deeply loved, super clingy wife. He had sworn to treat her exactly like the queen she is in this second chance at life.